It's a joy and an honor to be here, but it's also one of the most serious moments of my life because we're looking at just in another week, last week, this week, of horrific another school shooting. So here's the most important thing. You're going to be seeing the crash 20-minute presentation of everything that we need to know, but you need to keep one thing in mind. There is not one thing that you can do, one little thing that's going to stop school shooting. You're going to be looking at a number of elements together that are research-based, evidence-based, that is our best chance because we know that we can do better. We know that the intervention and the after effect doesn't stop it, but we do know that there are some fabulous things that we can be doing. As of right now, we're looking at a scale of horrific massacres. My whole heart started with this with Columbine. When I worked in Columbine and saw that what parents were doing that first day of having their kids go back on that school campus was form a human chain of all of the parents wrapping around an entire school, holding hands to cheer their kids on, to give them enough courage to walk back onto that school. Let's be clear, because now what we're looking at is a whole new rash of what we think will work. We've got bulletproof backpacks, we've got bulletproof smartboards, we've got bulletproof glass, we've got bulletproof vests for our children. We now know also what happened in Sparks. None of that would have worked because the entire thing was over in 3 minutes. So let's be clear that we need to look at prevention, but we also need to look at some payment in life of what really does work. The best bulk of what we do know does work was actually studied by the Secret Service and the FBI. They've looked at all school shooters and they've given us fascinating evidence of what will work. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that does not cost a dime, we still haven't implemented. But here's what we do need to keep in mind. First, when I wrote Senate Bill 1667, I devoured every single bit of research out there on what will stop school violence, what will stop youth offenders. And I found it's not one thing, it's three things. It's a three-legged stool, and you better take a moment as a school and say, which ones are we already doing? Pat yourself on the back and go, no problem, we got that one. Which are we missing? All of these will be on a link for you for CEP website. All I want you to do is save yourself writer's cramp and instead look at them and say, got that one. But here's the piece when we have a discussion that I need to fill in. First, we know that physical safety is absolutely critical. We know that we need to make sure that our kids do not come to school with a weapon. We know that most of our children, 3/4 of them, are causing a school shooting with a handgun. Let's make sure that the place is safe, that's physically safe. We're going to look at other elements to that. We know, number two, that emotionally safe and psychologically secure learning environments are absolutely critical. We'll look at ways to change the school culture. Our best hope for metal detectors isn't the metal detector, but peers, because we also know that 75% of kids before they commit suicide or homicide tell. Who do they tell? Usually a peer. Let's mobilize them. Third thing is we know that we better teach our kids some skills because most of our kids are saying, I don't know what to do. There's some fabulous skills that we do know work. Let's start using them. Let's start utilizing them. One of the best things we got to look at right now is Chicago Public Schools, who are reducing violence unbelievably. What are they doing? They put in restorative justice. And as a result, it's making a difference beforehand so kids feel psychologically safe. With that in mind, here's your crash 20 minutes. Let's go. Because step number one is we need to make sure our kids feel physically and emotionally safe. How do we do it? First, you got to have a crisis plan. Do you have one? Do you have one in place that is really based on what the Secret Service says works, what the FBI says works? The links I'll give you later on will tell you that's what you need to look at your benchmark. But number two is when you have that crisis intervention plan, does everybody know what to do and is it planned? One of the most amazing things is looking at, we are great at fire safety. We do drills like leaps and bounds. Every kid knows what to do with a drill of fire safety. Do you know that we've never had a child die in our schools from fire? Never. But we still have, what do we do in case there's a school shooting? What do we do in case there is kind of a problem or a threat? Let's go one step more. Where do we get the majority of this information? Actually, it came from a place called Cleveland Elementary. It was the first school shooting, but it wasn't a shooting by a student. It was a shooting by an outsider. It's called a Black Swan terrorist attack. It was a deranged veteran, but here's what we need to do. It's the principal. It's an extraordinary principal who to this day said, here's what I didn't have in plan. I didn't have in plan a lockdown. I didn't have in plan walkie-talkies. I didn't have a plan of how to connect with one another. That particular principal was instrumental in helping all of the rest of us go, here's what we do need to do in order to have safety on our school. Second, you need to train to make sure, if there's 12 keys, here's number 2. Is every one of your staff trained in violence prevention? You need to have, ideally, says the Secret Service and FBI, one staff member, not all of you, who is one who's going to be your liaison, who's going to go back and forth to main trainings in school safety. That person will then, to be cost effective, come and tell you, here's what works, here's what doesn't work. But everybody needs to be on the same plan. I will say the most scathing thing you need to keep in mind is that the first responder in each one of these school shootings is not the police. It's a teacher or it's a principal. Make sure you're aware of that and know what to do. Even in Sparks, who's the first responder who was killed? A Marine veteran who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. Number 2. Number 3 is, have you surveyed your kids? What's the perception of safety? They need desperately to be given, and so too your parents, that we are a safe school, because the majority of our schools are safe. To this day, we do know that there's no guarantee, but schools are one of the safest institutions we have. But still, you need to create a safety measure of asking your kids, how safe do you feel? Where don't you feel safe? And ask them specifically. It's absolutely critical that you do, because that will give you a benchmark of what's going on. What we do know is that the majority of times our children are the ones who will be able to say, here's the kids that you better look out for. We're overlooking them, but the kids know. 4 is, ask the kids to identify where are what police departments say are hot spots. The places where they feel least safe, and by the way, those are the places on your school. What we're looking at is the majority of our kids, 43%, are fearful using your school restrooms. Why? That's where bullying happens. What does bullying have to do with school safety? Huge correlation, because we know 3 out of 4 of the kids who were school shooters had been bullied. At one point, you're going to look at the bullied child flips into his role and becomes the bully, because nobody steps in and stops it. We know that we need to make sure that our schools are safe and there's surveillance. When I do focus groups with kids, this is the top one they say, put up video cameras. And the fascinating thing is the kids themselves will say, I know you don't have a whole bunch of money, you don't have to put the film in it, but just knowing that think we're being watched makes us feel safer. They'll tell you, put up big mirrors like in parking lots, because that's going to make us feel safer. Because the majority of time that bullying happens, folks, isn't when you're there. 85% of bullying happens when adult supervision isn't around. Is it kids feel a perception of safety will reduce the likelihood of school violence later on, because kids know that they're being safe. Obviously, we also need to make sure that our schools are in lockdown mode. Do you have one? Ask yourself, is there a place where every outside visitor is checked in? One of the things I love about school uniforms is within seconds you can tell who's an outsider, particularly if your staff wears school uniforms. It really gives you a bird's eye view of here's what creates safety, because you can visually see it. Use the broken window theory, and we know this from law enforcement. Kids or bullying will continue to happen in the same spot at the same time, because they figure out the spot where it's least likely to be adult supervised. Walk your hallways with the kid. It's a great strategy. Walk them. And as you're walking the hallways in your entire school parameters, do it at least every 2 months. Ask a different kid, where's the place you feel safest here? Where's the place you feel least safest? What'll happen with the broken window effect? Law enforcement says that we know that criminals always go back to the same spot each time, because they know I can get away with it. Make sure, same mentality with kids, you're going back to the same spot and you are repairing the window, or you're putting up light in that area, really. Or you're getting what they'll say is, make sure that that vending machine is locked up back, because kids are hiding behind it, doing some really bad stuff. What are they doing? You don't want to know. Just lock up the vending machine, they'll tell you. Make sure you identify those hot spot areas. You will reduce 50% of your bullying in about less than a week. All kids need to know is there's certain spots that are more likely to be really your hotter areas. One of the simplest things when you say you don't have time to do this or money, give every kid a map of the school. Have them locate, here's the hot spots and here's the cool spots. Within seconds, they'll be able to tell you, here's the places I feel safe, here's the places I don't feel safe. Where are places kids feel the safest? Where there's teachers standing at the door. The most simple idea that every kid will tell me in a focus group is, just please stand at the door. If I know you're standing at the door, it makes us feel cared about. It also makes us feel like that teacher's looking into the hallways, and locker locations are a hot button issue. Emotionally safe, caring environments is number 2. First, you got to make sure it's physically safe. By the way, we're putting all our time and energy into the physical safety mode. We're really good. We're trying to arm our teachers. We're trying to make sure there's metal detectors around. We're putting all the energy into that. And we're putting our energy into the crisis intervention, which is the after the fact. Let's do the next 2, which stop it from escalating to the next level up. Emotionally safe, caring environments, hands down, research says, are the way we may be overlooking, and they're critical. It's kids who can change the school norms from it's cool to be cruel to it's wonderful to be kind. Particularly kids, says the University of California, Davis, who are on the 2nd tier of the popularity ladder. They have the clout, they have the real clout with the rest of the kids, and they can maximize effectiveness. When we look at schools who are bullying, kids who said there's a hot zone of bullying in this spot, but the child goes from that school and goes over to here, and they say, what's different? What's different about this place? There you've got feeding going to another environment. Thanks. Yeah, it just simply mean the biggest thing is that the child has been, there's a safe zone here on the schools, the teacher cares about the kids, and there's number 5.